Welcome to Big Blend Radio with your hosts, Lisa and Nancy, editors of BigBlendMagazine.com.
Author-Edwin-Hill is the Edgar and Agatha Award-winning nominated author of this whole series. This is very cool. The Hester-Thursby-Mystery-Series, which includes, the first one is Little Comfort, the second is The Missing Ones, and now the third one is out, and it's called Watch Her. Talk about a title. I know.
Yeah.
I'm very excited. Hey, I always think it's really cool when you got a research librarian involved in a mystery series, because I think they know everything. I really do. Librarians, we don't get to have them in the spotlight as much. I'm really glad about it, but we're excited to have Edwin join us on the Big Blend Radio today. I encourage you to go to his website. It's edwin-hill.com, and of course, go get his books. You're going to want to after this conversation. So, Edwin, how are you?
Oh, I'm great. Thank you so much for having me today.
Hey, cool. We're excited. We're excited. Your books read fast. I mean, is it from reading so many, mystery novels? How is it that you have that talent to get you hooked in immediately?
Oh gosh, I think it's just a lot of practice, to be honest. I started and failed many times trying to write my first mystery novel, and I think writing is just like any skill. You have to do it for a while before you really master how to make a story go forward, how to capture characters, how to really drive that tension in a story. So I try to focus in when I'm writing on character first. I try to create interesting characters to fill the pages, but then I also try to put in a lot of different, a lot of exciting things to kind of keep the pages moving.
I definitely think the characters are a big part of this. And let's talk with Hester-Thursby. I want to talk about each book because you've got 3 out, and I think it's you should read them all. They all can stand on their own, I know. But let's talk with Hester-Thursby. I like her name, number one. She's got a good name.
Yep.
And thank you again for making a research librarian as the main character.
Oh yeah, that was kind of fun. So Hester-Thursby is the main character. You'd call her an amateur sleuth in the world of mysteries. And she works at Harvard's Widener Library, which is the world's largest research library. And on the side, she finds missing people. So she'll have different people ask her to find people like long lost prom dates or neighbors that they lost track of or something like that. But also she'll get involved with cases where there's a lot more danger and intrigue involved. What can I tell you about Hester? So first, her name is kind of interesting. I always name characters very, very quickly when I'm drafting a novel. You can get distracted when you're writing very easily. You can find a whole day's gone by, and all you've done is hang out on baby naming sites. And so when I came up with Hester as a concept, I didn't know a ton about her, but I knew she was a woman, and I knew that she had a child that she was responsible for, a little girl. And I thought, well, what do I name them? So I quickly named them Hester and Pearl after the characters in The Scarlet Letter. And I just kind of wrote for the day. And then the next day I woke up and I started to write again, and I thought, that's so pretentious. I really don't want to keep those names. And so I was thinking about it, and I was like, well, I like Hester. I think I'll keep that. But I wound up changing the girl's name to Kate. So now it's Hester and Kate. And for Thursby, for the last name, when I was writing my first novel, Hester loves movies. And when in the first draft, she really loved romantic comedies. I wound up changing that later on to horror movies. But when she still liked romantic comedies, I was going to call the book His Girl Thursby, which is a play on His Girl Friday, which is a famous romantic comedy. And so that's where I came up with Thursby, the last name, Hester-Thursby.
Okay, there it is. And, she's also got her friend, Detective Angela White. I like that, too.
Yep. Oh, so Angela White. So all 3 of the books are written from. They're always 4 point of view characters. So 4 different people tell the story. They each have a piece of the mystery. Even Hester doesn't have the whole mystery. Each of them has a piece of the mystery, and it's really the reader's job to sort of tie all of the pieces together at the end of the novel and see how they all fit together. And so Angela White's been a really fun character to develop. She came out of my first novel very organically. I was writing the novel, and I got about 2/3 of the way through the novel, and there was a murder, and I needed a detective to investigate the murder. So I was like, okay, let's have this detective show up, and her name was Angela White. And she wound up having a few scenes in that book. There were a couple of very dramatic scenes that she was involved with, and readers really, really liked her. Like I would go around and talk to people at libraries and talk to people at book events, and everyone was like, we love Angela White. And so I thought, okay, well, I was working on my second book, which is called The Missing Ones, and I thought, well, why don't I pull her into that book too? So I sort of created, she has sort of a secondary role in that book, a large secondary role. And again, that book came out, and readers told me, boy, we really like Angela White. Do more with Angela White. So I was writing my third book, and I thought, let's give her a hefty role in this book. So she is one of the point of view characters. She's a detective with the Boston Police Department. And in the story in Watcher, she and Hester sort of work hand in hand solving it together.
Awesome.
As they move through the story. So they sort of swap roles in sort of finding information and sort of driving the mystery of the story forward.
Hey, and it's women power. I dig that. We got to have more women. Yeah, come on. A lot of times it's always men who dominate. Sorry, but it's true, and it's really nice to have a woman detective, out there doing stuff.
Thanks,
and I think
thanks.
it's moving more that way over the years. We're starting to see more women in making wine. I don't know why that's important right now, but it is. It's important. But we're also seeing in a lot of mystery writing that women are, they're out there solving the crimes and being, pardon this, but badasses. And it's really exciting for us as readers and women to see that happen. And also, not only that, but also we're seeing more and more men write with women as their main characters, which is interesting.
It's interesting that.
Yeah,
I've noticed.
Oh, that's interesting. A lot of people ask me why I started out with a woman as the main character.
Yeah.
And I hate to tell you, it's such a random. It was such a random decision, and it's one that I'm glad of. When I was writing my first book, Little Comfort, I actually started with the antagonist. That book is about these two guys who are sort of like chameleons. They can move into someone's life and really infiltrate that person's life. It was inspired by a story, a real-life story, the Clark Rockefeller case, which happened here in Boston. That was this guy who pretended to be a member of the Rockefeller family, but he actually wasn't. And when his story started to unravel, he went on the run with his daughter, and it was sort of national news. That was maybe 10 or 12 years ago.
Wow.
So I came up with the two antagonists in that story, and when I finally decided, and again, this is my first book, so I worked on it for quite a while, and it was sort of a stop and start process. When I finally decided I needed to come up with some like a protagonist, I needed to come up with a foil for these two guys. I really didn't want to write a book about three men. And so my whole decision process was, well, I don't want to write a book about three men, so I'll make the protagonist a woman. And Hester-Thursby was born. And now here I am 3 books later.
Go ahead. No, Nancy, go ahead.
Okay, I was just going to ask, when you're writing, as a woman, do you think, okay, the decision has to be made? Would a woman make the decision any different? The process of making the decision, is it any different in your mind as if a man was going to make a decision?
Well, I think you have to take in real world considerations. I mean, you have to think about the way women engage with the world, the way women think about relationships with other people, the way women think about safety, all sorts of things like that. And, you just, as a writer, as a fiction writer, you're constantly inhabiting people who aren't you, right? Whether or not they're a different sex, a different age, a different profession. I mean, if you really break Hester down into her components, there are lots of things that are different about her from me. I mean, she's 10 years younger than I am. She's 12 years younger than I am. She is a woman. She's a librarian. I'm not a librarian. She has children. I don't have children. She's estranged from her mother. I'm not estranged from my mother. There are all sorts of things that sort of drive her decision making. And as a fiction writer, you want to inhabit that character's psyche and really try and think about how that character would engage with any decision. And you have to think about how the character would engage in that decision and not the way you would engage in that decision. So I do try and find a few things that are similar between me and her as I'm writing. So like Hester loves horror movies. I like horror movies. Hester is kind of a grumpy loner, and I'm a grumpy loner. So, I do bring parts of myself into it, and I'll do that with other characters as well. There's a character in Watch Her called Maxine Polakowski, who is another one of the point of view characters in that novel. She's the general manager Watch Her. The central story in Watch Her is about a for-profit college, fictional for-profit college based in Boston. And Maxine is the general manager of that school. And so when I was coming up with Maxine, I wanted to make some things similar to myself, some things about her similar to myself. So a couple things that I did is I made us the exact same age, so that when Maxine made a decision or thought about something that happened in her past life or in the past, I kind of always knew where she was in time because we were the same age. So when she was thinking about when she was 27 years old, I didn't have to think about what it meant to be like a 70-year-old thinking about being 27. I could just remember what it was like for me to be 27 at that time. And I'll do that with other characters as well.
Now with Maxine, is that why you go by Edwin and not Ed? Because she doesn't want to be called Max.
Oh no! I mean, I go by Edwin. That's my professional author name. Ed-Hill is not the most interesting name to see written on a book cover. But some people call me Ed. Yeah.
I like Edwin. That's prestigious.
Yeah,
that's
it's an interesting name. I've come to terms with it over the years.
Yeah, no, it's very English. It's like, I'm Edwin. No, I like that. I like it.
That sounds British. Edwin.
Hey, listen,
from the Edwardian period.
I know, it's Edwardian. I've got the last name of Smith, so trust me, any name is good. Any name is good in the book with me. But yeah, and so with this Watch Her, one thing, talking about this for-profit college, this is something so important now. Campus security is really big, and this year, Nancy and I have traveled all over. Unfortunately, not to your area of Boston and New England as much, which we really want to get to. I think the closest we got was Delaware, Maryland, and Pennsylvania is as close as we got. And it's all of it was foreign to us. And it was like, whoa, man. And it wasn't anything we expected, no matter what. But I think it's really cool when you take a region and develop that as your background of your books, too, because I think people who have been there have that familiarity. And then also those who haven't get to, understand a region before they go there. So it's kind of a cool thing. But and Boston, you gotta we're shipping off to Boston to find our wooden legs. But anyway, sorry, but having I'm sorry, it's one of my favorite songs. When you have a for-profit college right now, and there's scandal in the college, right, and it goes
very
right
timely.
now. People are looking at so much about what is going on with colleges, for-profit or not, campus security. We've been through a lot of campuses this year. And notice, all kinds of security things, like you can make a call to 911 from this booth, all those kind of things. And of course, it's been making headlines for the last 5 to 10 years, campuses, all kinds of things, but also the scandal and the profiting of campuses and colleges. So I think it's kind of timely. And we're also looking at, financially about, affordability for college and going to university. So I think it's really timely. Did you consider that when you decided to put the college part in there?
Yeah. So I think it was maybe 5 years ago, there was a big nationwide for-profit college that went belly up. It was called Corinthian College, and that was sort of that's what sort of inspired this story from the start. So Corinthian College, they had campuses all over the country under different names. But they closed very quickly, and it left a lot of students in the lurch. It left a lot of students without degrees, left a lot of students in debt without a lot of recourse as to where to go from there. And I thought that it just sounded like it was just an interesting thing to look into. I also, for many, many years, I worked in college higher ed publishing. I worked for a large publishing company. And so obviously, as part of that job, we would sell to these for-profit schools. So I had exposure to them as well. And it just interested me. It interested me as a business model, and it interested me just to look at how an organization might be corrupt or might just go under for whatever reason. So I did a lot of research into what for-profit colleges look like. For anyone who doesn't know, a for-profit college is a college that is required to is asked to deliver profit to its board to its shareholders. So that's the big difference between a traditional college and a for-profit college. And so I did that research. I wound up not bringing a ton of the scandal or the downfall of any of these schools into the story. In the end, the story winds up really being about the family that owns the college. But it was really interesting research as I was going through and writing the story.
I think that though the Corinthian scandal, I'm trying to think back, but I think there would be room for a murder in there.
Oh yeah.
Oh sure.
Yeah, wasn't it like it was a nonprofit, and then they had connection to people who would chase students to pay back their loans or something, and then turned out that it was all the same people. Something weird like that, like the nonprofit.
I don't remember all the details, but it really came. It came down to I think it really came down to them being in a precarious situation, and that it snowballed so quickly that the schools wound up closing very, very quickly.
It's interesting too. There was we were driving. I don't know where we were, West Virginia, who knows? Listening to a girl that she had written a book. Apparently, like it became this like just giant war and peace style book of research that she did when she was in college. One of the students that she knew, I think she got raped and then died. It was murdered or something, and people just brushed over it. But her body was found later or something like that, and she couldn't let it go. And people were like, "Oh no, she's dead," and this happened. And she was like, "No." And she just kept going and going and going at it. And I think she even had to go to another country to find more information. She even dropped out of school to go and because she couldn't shake it. And it was so much information that even people trying to read it, apparently it was way too much. But I think she just got obsessed with like this was let go. And it was also because it was a girl versus a guy, and the teachers were all part of it. It was like this weird. They didn't want the teachers to get in trouble because then the school would look bad financially, and then kids wouldn't go to school. It was like brush it under the rug quickly. And so when those got hold of your book, I'm like, oh, this is cool because I wonder about things like that getting brushed under the rug because it's education. You've got to think about the students having to have that safety, especially for girls, and having that safety mode of what happens in colleges, even as all the hazing and all of that was going on.
That's bad.
So there's all of that safety part. And so when they're trying to get all this money, which is a lot of money, you got to think like a lawyer. I mean, what you could get into debt, like you could owe an amount of a house, if you don't pay off your loan fast.
Like student loans are horrendous. The amount of money they're charged, it takes a lifetime to pay them back.
It can. And I think that's one of the really interesting things to look at with higher ed. I mean, college education is of course, is something that's very valuable and people value, and it can really help you move forward in life. But it's also something that you want to go into with your eyes wide open. You want to make sure that you're going to school at the right time. And you want to make sure that you're making the right decisions when you go into school, so that you don't come out with hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt with either the wrong degree or a degree that doesn't help you go forward in life.
Yeah, it's true. I think a lot of people do go I got to get a degree, liberal arts or the easiest one. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm just saying there's an opinion that, let's just get any degree just I have a degree. On the other hand, look what you're going to have to pay for it. I mean, I personally would love to see education free. I think countries would be far stronger if education was free.
Well, I agree with you on that one too. I don't know if that's going to happen though.
No, it'd be nice to see though.
It's such a it's one of those everybody's we could have like a 2-hour discussion on it, and everyone will start sending us emails and all that good stuff about it. But I'm really glad you put it in the spotlight in a book, because I think that novels, it's like music and movies, have a way of opening minds, and I wonder about with your books about opening the straight male mind a little bit. I'm not knocking anybody, so I'm just asking, like, do you get a lot of women readers?
I get a balance of readers. I don't know if this is actually true, but I'm going to say it anyway. But remember that I just said that. I think in general, women read more fiction than men do. And so I think when you're publishing a book, you're generally going to have more women readers than men. But my novel is about a woman, and I think women are going to be more inclined to read them because of that. And I do try to, again, as I said at the beginning, I really try to focus in on character development here. So I do think character development comes before anything else. When you're writing a novel, it comes before tension, it comes before the plot, it comes before everything. It's really what keeps readers reading the most of all. I like to think that Hester is a really well-developed three-dimensional character that people, especially people who have kept with the whole series, have liked the way that she's evolved as a character through the series.
And you can pick up you can pick them up, you can read them backwards if you want, but I always think it is kind of cool to go read the whole series if you can. But you can watch her now and enjoy it without having the other two. You've written it that way.
I write all the books to be standalone books so that you can read them on their own. I'll quote Louise Penny, who's one of my favorite authors here. And I'm not going to quote her. I'm going to reference something that she said, and she said much more eloquently than I did. But she says something like, she writes a series. It's for anyone who doesn't know. It's set in southern Quebec. It's about a inspector called Armand Gamache, and she always writes. I think she's on book 14. She says you can read any of her books out of order with your head. But if you want to read them with your heart, you should read them in order, because that's how you really get to know the characters as the series evolves.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Cool.
I remember growing up, I got addicted to like the sagas. Like I needed to read like the whole family saga, and Edwin would have been a good name in some of those sagas. The historical fiction reads, you know what I mean? Like Wilbur Smith, it would be the Kent family.
Yeah.
And they would go through these generational things, and some were naughty, some were not, and I really, as a kid, that's how I got interested in history, was reading these books. And then you had to have mystery. Like I was addicted to the Hardy Boys as a kid. I thought the Hardy Boys were awesome. Nancy Drew and all that as a kid. I thought that was great. But, and then there's just, I really miss those old things that was on your website. And everyone, again, it's Edwin-Hill. And you're talking about, VHS tapes and all that. When those came out, it was like really cool. But growing up for me, like I really miss, and I keep talking, I don't know what's going on lately, but I have this nostalgic thing going over me this year about going back to the 80s and watching like the movies back in the 80s, and then even the TV series, watching like, Murder, She Wrote, Angela Lansbury, and things like that. I know you're into Agatha Christie, and watch, all of that. Do you kind of miss those kind of things now? Like, I don't know.
Sure. I think right now, I feel like because of the way the world is right now with COVID, and it's just, I feel like it's been such a challenging year for so many people. I think returning to simpler things, simpler times, there's a real temptation there. I mean, you can't go back, but I do yearn for a time when things were easier. I yearn for a time where we weren't available all of the time, where we weren't constantly getting emailed and texted, and where Twitter wasn't around and that kind of stuff. And it's funny, I was laughing as you were talking about the things that you've been doing, because I went through this little phase this summer where I was watching Murder, She Wrote every night. And finally I had to say to myself, you can watch to the end of this season, and then you have to stop, because it almost felt like an addiction.
I used to watch Columbo, and at first I thought
I love that show too.
Yeah, but I got really, after a while, I got really irritated with it. I'm like, oh, get on with it. You know?
Oh, well, Columbo's so funny because when that show aired, the episodes were an hour and a half long.
Yeah.
And they take their time, let's put it that way. I mean, you'll have a scene that lasts for like 5 minutes that just shows someone walking through their living room.
Yeah, I got irritated. Yeah, I got impatient with it after a while. I was like, okay, I liked it, but I don't know. I just got impatient with it, and that's on me, you know.
Well, I love that show because I love
it.
seeing all the old movie stars, and I love seeing their terrible teeth, and you know, it's just it just is up from a different time. Yep.
Yeah, but that's
and their awful living rooms, their awful decor.
Oh yes, now you have to watch Shameless for that now. But it's in Shameless and Schitt's Creek. That's where we're at now, you know. But when you look at it now, it's like to me, it's the characters. We have a Hollywood historian who does podcast, Steve Steichert, on our show, and we always talk about England. We talk about like British comedy and all of that because of the character. It's so character driven. I mean, there was that one comedy sitcom that was just about everything that happened in their living room because they had no budget. But it was like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. But I think it is character, and that goes back to you with your writing. And for it to move fast through characters, it is that. And I think that's kind of where we're like, when you watch Angela Lansbury, like you're into her character. You know, it's like there's something about her character. You want to see how she reacts to things, how she handles things. So does watching any of those shows help you with character development and that movement that you have, that flow in your read, or you should say in your writing?
I think so. I mean, I think that anytime you engage with storytelling is really helpful, and you can learn something from anything that you read. I mean, you can learn something from, you know, I might like something I really don't like to write are sex scenes. And so, you know, I might look at how a romance novelist does that because that's something that that genre is really good at. And they know how to use the language and how to make that into a very exciting scene that readers really want to, you know, tear through. But, you know, I think you can learn things from watching TV. You can learn, and you certainly learn things from reading other authors and just seeing how they tackle different problems.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't want to write sex scenes at all. Oh my gosh, no.
That sounds to me like the hardest part of something to write. I mean, I can see,
and then there were fireworks. That's it.
Oh gosh, that's what I always do. I always cut away to black when it comes to that kind of scene. So
I think it's funny. I look at that as comedy. I don't know. It's just me. I don't know, quirky, but you know. I know, like now, all over the news is Kentucky Fried Chicken and Mario's Place.
Oh yeah, I haven't seen that yet.
Oh my gosh!
Okay, and then here comes this big. Who would have thought? There's a big, sexy, romantic thing behind Kentucky Fried Chicken. I'm sorry, I can't go there in my mind.
Oh my gosh! Okay, don't even start. Don't start. No, don't start me. Nuh-uh. Let's. So okay, we've got Watcher is set in. Here's the for-profit college. Now let's go back to the very first one that you wrote, and when you think about it, Little Comfort's the first one. Give us kind of an overview of that, and then we can talk about the next one so people know what the missing ones is about.
Oh sure. Little Comfort it's set in Boston. So Hester lives with her partner, her longtime boyfriend, whose name is Morgan. They live in Somerville, and they take care of Morgan's niece, who in the first book is 3 years old. Her name is Kate, and she's sort of been foisted on them by Morgan's sister, who's skipped town. And so Hester is actually on leave from the library in the first book. She because she's dealing with having to take care of this kid, and she's not thrilled about it. I mean, at that point, she's 36 years old. She has chosen not to have children, and all of a sudden she has to take care of this kid. And so then she gets a call from a woman named Lila Blaine, and Lila Blaine lives up in New Hampshire, and she hires Hester to find her brother. Her brother is named Sam Blaine, and he disappeared about 10 years ago. but she thinks that he has moved back to the Boston area. So she hires Hester to see if she can find Sam. So that story is told from Hester's point of view. It's told from Sam's point of view, and it's also told from Sam's best friend's point of view, a guy named Gabe DiPersio. And Sam and Gabe they're chameleons. They have moved around the country. They're grifters. They've moved around the country sort of bilking people out of money. But Sam in particular is really capable of infiltrating someone's life. He can become whoever you want him to be. And so he targets this family called the Richards family. The Richards family is a wealthy family in Boston. They live on Beacon Hill. And he targets the daughter of the family, who's about his age. Her name is Wendy Richards, and they start dating. And so Hester finds him just as Wendy and Sam are beginning their relationship. And of course, Sam turns out to be much more dangerous than Hester realized that he would be. And so some of the things that I do in that novel that I enjoy, all of the novels I try to explore a different part of New England. So that book takes place in Somerville, where Hester and Morgan live. It also takes place on Beacon Hill, which is a really fun, historical, towny part of Boston. But a lot of the action actually takes place up in New Hampshire, in the Lakes region of New Hampshire, in the middle of the winter. So it's very cold, it's very snowy. Hester is actually kidnapped and has to sort of fight for her life in the wilds of New Hampshire. And it takes place on this lake called Squam Lake. Going back to the 80s, if you remember, do you remember the movie on Golden Pond starring Jane Fonda and Henry Fonda?
Oh yes,
yeah.
Oh yes.
So that movie was filmed on Squam Lake, where the action of this story takes place. So you can sort of picture that lake in that movie, but picture it in the winter, and that's where all of the action takes place. So that was the first book. And then my second book is called The Missing Ones, and this takes place about a year after Little Comfort is over. And Hester is pretty traumatized after the events of Little Comfort, and she has stopped taking Kate, who's now 4 years old. She's stopped taking Kate to preschool, and she stopped going to work, but she lies about it to Morgan. She pretends that she goes to work every day, and she pretends that she drops Kate off at school. Meanwhile, on an island up off the coast of Maine, a woman named Annie has moved to this island, and she's on the verge of being homeless. Fall is coming in, and she doesn't quite know what to do, where to go once winter hits. Meanwhile, a child disappears on that island, and for reasons that I won't reveal here, Hester winds up going to the island to see if she can find this missing child. So that was fun, because that book was really fun to write, because I based the island. So if you've never been to Maine, there are tons and tons of islands. Oh, it's beautiful. And there are tons and tons of islands off the coast of Maine. And they all sort of have their own different personalities. One of them is called Monhegan Island, and it's about 8 miles off the coast of Boothbay Harbor. And Boothbay Harbor is sort of, it's in the southern part of the state, but it's pretty far north. And so Monhegan Island was an artist colony in the 19th and 20th century. Nowadays, it's, people have summer houses there. And so I think maybe 2,000 people live there during the summer. It's less than 4 square miles, and no cars are allowed on it. So you have to walk everywhere. So it feels very rustic. It feels like you're going back in time when you go there. So I based the island where Hester goes to investigate this missing child on Monhegan Island. I wound up changing a lot of the landscape, so I changed the name of the island to Finisterre Island. I also always say, because the island is so small and so few people live there, they probably don't want some guy from outside coming in and saying all these horrible people live there. So I always say the beauty comes from Monhegan Island and the horrible people come from me. And so that's that's The Missing Ones. And then we've talked about Watcher. Watcher takes place about a year after the end of The Missing Ones. And so Kate is now 5 years old. She is in kindergarten. And Hester and Morgan are still together. They still live in their house in Somerville. And the action in Watch Her takes place mostly it's a neighborhood in Boston called Jamaica Plain, which is sort of a residential neighborhood in Boston, but it definitely has a thriving downtown as well. But one of the fun things about Jamaica Plain is that there's a big park system in Boston. It's called the Emerald Necklace. It was designed by Frederick Olmsted at the very beginning of the 20th century. Cool. And when he was designing that park system, there's a pond in Jamaica called Jamaica Pond. And Jamaica Pond at the turn of the 20th century was like a summer resort. There were a lot of huge houses on the pond. Rich people would travel from Beacon Hill out to, it was like 5 miles, but it was a long time then. They would travel from Beacon Hill out to Jamaica Pond in the summer to swim in the lake and stuff like that. So when the park system acquired the land, they tore down all of the houses except for one, which is called Pine Bank Mansion. Olmsted decided that he really liked that house, and so he incorporated it into the design of the park. And the park system used the mansion for a long time. They used the Children's Museum. They used it for offices and that kind of thing. But then there were a couple fires there in the 70s, and it became uninhabitable. And for a long time, the ruin was right on the edge of the lake, and it was covered with graffiti. It was surrounded by chain link fence. And then I think it was maybe 5 or 10 years ago, they finally decided they weren't going to be able to save it, so they tore it down. So when I was writing this novel, I was like, hey, you know what? I always loved that little ruin, so I'm going to bring that house back. And so I have the family that owns the for-profit college in Watch Her. They actually live in Pine Bank Mansion on the banks of Jamaica Pond, which is obviously fictional. Nope, the house isn't there anymore. But it was fun to imagine it being there.
Yeah, I want to go.
I want to live there too.
All the settings to me now. I want to we need to come back. I know we're going west supposedly, depending on COVID, but I need to go back east now, Nancy. We need to go to Maine too. I mean, we almost did that. I know, not in winter.
Oh my
but
gosh!
Hey,
well, you should go to Maine. You should go to Acadia National Park, which is one of the most beautiful places.
Yep.
Oh, I mean, this year was really difficult because Maine was closed down for so long. I feel badly for the region because tourism is a big deal for them in the summer, spring, and fall. And it was just it was a rough time, but hopefully we'll do it next year. And now I want to read all your books from the beginning. They have to all be from I have to do them all from the start. And I love it that you have these settings, and they sound seasonal too. So, are you writing a summer novel next?
Right now, I'm actually working on a standalone. That's funny that you said that. So, I did that very purposely. So, the first book, Little Comfort, is set in winter. The Missing Ones is set in autumn and fall. Watch Her is set in spring, and yes, the fourth novel is set in the summer, and I have an outline for it. I haven't started it yet, but it's set on. It takes place in a beach town on the south shore of Massachusetts, so there'll be a lot of summertime activities and that kind of thing. Right now, I'm actually working on a standalone book that doesn't feature Hester-Thursby, but is set in Boston.
Cool.
Right on. Well, that's exciting. Hey, so listen, this is good stuff. Everyone, you got to go get the books. And go to Edwin-Hill. There's no Ed in there. It's Edwin. Go to Edwin-Hill.com. But before you guys, you should have heard a little doggy called Gus bark in the distance here right now where we are in Madison, Wisconsin. Because, look, we didn't do Maine for winter, but we did Madison.
That sounds great.
I know. We're going to get some French soup and cheese curds any day now. But it's interesting. I know that you have a dog that is a very beautiful dog. Tell everybody about your beauty. Because, now, does Edith Ann help you write? Does she sit with you while you write? Kind of go, okay, it's time for you to get up and, take it outside.
Edith Ann is my golden lab, or my yellow lab, and she's about 4 years old now, and she is like anyone who has a dog. She is so important to my day-to-day health, especially in this year where things have been so challenging. But, she suffers through belly rubs and endless walks, as I try and think my way through novels. Novel writing, you do write when you're creating a novel, but what you do a lot of is, and so having a dog who can kind of sit with you while you're thinking, or can go for a walk with you while you're thinking, or can come and distract you and give you some time to think through a plot point or a problem that you're having with a character is just such a gift. So yes, sometimes she'll sit here with me in my office. I always say that she loves my first drafts enough to eat them, and I'm thankful for that because nobody should see my first drafts except for her.
Now, she's got her own Instagram page. What is it? Tell everybody that because it's cool. I want to go follow it.
Edith Ann Lab.
I know.
Edith Ann Lab.
Yeah.
And you can follow her there.
Now, the one thing, too, with, got Edith Ann now, I know Nancy and I spend a lot of time with dogs and cats and fish and any animal we can get around, we will. And what people don't know while we're taking care of their dogs is that we teach their dogs all kinds of words. And we also like to talk to them in different accents. And if I'm working on an article, I will read the article to them as part of my proofreading process. And I'll do it in a different accent because proofreading. So I want to know, do you read part of the novel, or do you actually have a editorial discussion with Edith Ann?
I will actually, when we're walking outside, I will sometimes have conversations. I have not tried reading anything to her, but I think I will try that now. But I will have conversations with her. I'll be like, what do you think about this? How am I going to find my way through this? And she'll be like, she'll just be trotting along. And hopefully, not always, but hopefully by the end of the walk, I've somehow figured out how to get myself out of the hole that I've dug myself into.
Oh, yeah, I love it. So writing yourself into a corner, I think that's an interesting process.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it is an interesting process, and it can be super annoying when it happens. But usually you're able to think your way through it. Sometimes you have to back out and kind of go at it. Sometimes you lose a few days worth of writing in the process, but that's all part of the nature of the beast.
Yeah.
Mm. Well, thank you so much for joining us. It has been a true delight chatting with you. Everyone, again, the latest one is Watch Her, again, from the Hester-Thursby-Mystery-Series by Edwin-Hill. You can go to edwin-hill.com to learn more. Keep up with him. Follow him on social media. Get the books, Amazon, all those places, Barnes & Noble, your independent bookstore. If they don't have it, talk to them. They'll get it. They'll send it to you. Work with the independents as much as you can. But we're always like to close with a song. And today, you know what, it's just one of those songs I just really wanted to play. And I know you don't have red light districts really in your book, but red light, that I've read yet, I don't know. I know you have little Amsterdam somewhere out there. But but anyway, this is Red Light Shakedown, and it's from our friend Brian Bourgault, and you can keep up with him. Go to Bourgault Band album, Be Kind, and it's just a really good album, and it's just a really good song, and there's cops involved, so I thought, hey, well, why not? We'll play it. So
it sounds perfect.
I know, Red Light Shakedown. Take care, Edwin. Have a wonderful holiday season.
Thank you so much,
start
both of
to
you.
The new year. Thank you.
You too. Bye-bye.